What's up? What's up? What's up? It's Jimmy McGee, the president, CEO of the Impact Movement. It's Monday, and we must be on Real Talk with our community, so it has to be Monday, October 26, 2020. We're just 8 days away from the end of the election this year. And so we want to welcome you tonight. And we've got a couple of announcements before you bring the guests on. So the first thing is, it's still early voting going on in Georgia. And it's still early voting going around the country. In fact, I think I just heard today that early voting started in one state today. So what I want you to do, go to the Impact Movement Facebook page or to our website, and we have some PDFs that you can check to see if you're registered to vote. Or go to www.blackchurch75.com. Go there, see if you're registered to vote. And if you're not, see if you can still register. We need you to get in and vote. Right now, I believe there's over 50 million people in the country who voted already. We're setting records. I understand that people anticipate in between 120 to 150 million people voting. So please exercise this right. And for those of us, and I mean all of you should do it if you're U.S. citizens, but for us in our Black community, you think about what happened in the Edmonds-Pettus Bridge when John Lewis was walking across. They got beat for the right that we have right now to vote. So don't fall asleep. Vote. I don't tell you who to vote, but I want you to vote. So here's some other announcements. October 30th. October 30th is National Juvenile Day. And this week, Healing Communities is having their conferences. They have their seminars on Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday, I think they're going to talk about reentry. Friday, they're going to talk about sex trafficking. But they've invited me to be the keynote address for their plenary on Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock. You don't have to pay for this conference, but it's very, very important. Healing Communities is put in place so that we can build communities for when our brothers and sisters come out of prison. They have a new community to adopt them and love them. I hope you would come and spend some time with us. October 31st, listen up, Impact Fam, and tell all of the young adults, all of the college students, show up, finding hope in the midst of troubled times. This coming Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to have a town hall meeting where we're going to have people who are in therapy, people who are staff workers, and students to come together and talk about any and every issue that you want to talk about. Come on and join us. Afterwards, for all you folk who know about our national conference and go way back in the day, James White, who spoke at Impact 18, is going to give us a word for 15 minutes. So I hope you will come and join us. I'm looking forward to this time. Okay, now, tonight, we're going to get down now. Now, everybody know that voting is important. And the end of the voting period stops November 3rd, the day after my mama's birthday. But that doesn't mean our work ends. Our work can still begin. There's a next thing to do. And so right now, I want to bring in some guests that we're going to have tonight. These people are entrepreneurs. They're all over the place in the country. And so first, let me bring in Miss Sharon Henry. Sharon Henry of SharonHenry.com. You'll see our website. Now, I want to be clear. Hey, Sharon.
Hey, Jimmy, how are you?
Good. So this is like the 9th time that I've met Sharon, and this is going to be the very first time that I won't forget it. All right. So Sharon is a realtist. She was a past president of the Empire Board of Realtors. And don't worry, she's going to explain what realtist is in contrast to realtor, right, Sharon?
Yes, I am.
All right. Let me get somebody else. Also from Chicago, my homeboy, Brian Jenkins. He's over there. Oh, that's Khary Bridgewater. I'll do Brian next. There's Brian Jenkins.
Hey,
president of Ingenuity. Say what's up, what's up, what's up?
Hey, man, how you doing?
I want y'all to know it's special for this dude to be with us tonight because the Bears are on.
There
so
you go.
I'm afraid he's probably got a split screen. So if you hear something happening in the background, he's turning over to see if Khalil Mack done tackles somebody tonight or not.
Crush somebody.
He's here tonight. He runs an entrepreneur center in Chicago. And he's going to talk us the various ways that nonprofits can make a difference right now. He's got a new book. It's called No More Nonprofits. And you'll see it on our Facebook pages, and we're going to put the links so you can go purchase them, unless he wants you to purchase them directly from him. And last but not least is Khary Bridgewater. Not Khary, Khary. All right, y'all know how we are in our community. Khary. And Khary, I know back in the day too, and I still remember him, Sharon. But I got to get this right because he's one of my board members. I can get in trouble this way.
That's right.
So he's on the board of the Impact Movement. He formerly was in philanthropy, working for the DeVos Family Foundations. Y'all know that name. And now he has developed a private equity firm. So he's in that business besides telling me what to do almost all the time. So he's one of my board members, and we get our board members on here. So I want to say welcome to all three of you. Thank you for being with Real Talk tonight. Excellent.
Thank you.
Well, let's start with the lady first. And so, again, as I was mentioning to our audience, tonight, all right, voting is over. So let's say everyone's cast their votes. Does that mean our work is over? No. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be happening in our community. I'm concerned about small business closures. I'm concerned about nonprofit. I'm concerned about philanthropy and monies and home ownership. So, Sharon Henry, help these people understand the difference of a realtist versus a realtor, because you are a realtist, correct?
Well, I'm actually both, but let me explain the difference between
All right.
Both of them are trade names, okay? A realtor is someone that took their license and has gotten a designation and decided to join a board, an organization. A realtist is the exact same person, right? But this is the difference. African Americans were not allowed to join NAR. They were not allowed to become realtors, all right? Believe it or not. Can you believe the fact that they would shut us out from joining the organization?
Just one more thing, right?
One more thing, okay? So back in 1939, the Empire Board of Realtors was born out of necessity, and that's here in Atlanta, Georgia. But across the country, the NAREB, which is the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, we were birthed out of necessity in 1947. And because they had a convention in Tampa, Florida in 1947 with Booker T. Washington, and realized that, you know, they were having a problem all across the country, being segregated, being shut out in areas that we could not purchase homes, right? They just wanted to keep us on different sides and just not being a part of the community. So a group of members got together, 11 men and one woman.
Uh-oh.
Like tonight, that one woman makes a difference.
Shut up.
Yes. They got together and formed the association, which is now called NAREB, N-A-R-E-B. And the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. We have over 90 chapters in different areas. We have them in Chicago, Brian. We have them all over, and we fight for democracy in housing. That's what we do. And we're in 2020, and we're still fighting today like it's 1947. The home ownership gap is ridiculous. We're only 47%, and most of our counterparts are at 74% in home ownership. So we need to catch up.
So are you telling me there's a 30% gap between other ethnic groups and home ownership and our Black community? Is that true?
Correct. There's a gap between how much money we have in our bank accounts. There's a gap with everything, but I'm sure we're going to get to that.
All right. Excellent. Excellent. And let's get to you, Brian. So most people don't understand that people can have a vocation. They can have a career in the nonprofit world. Is that correct? And there's all kinds of nonprofits, but you say in your book, the difference between a Black nonprofit and other nonprofits in terms of getting funding to survive and live, because what people, why don't you explain a nonprofit versus a for-profit for them?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Jimmy. And it's great to be on. The nonprofit is simply, I would say, it's a legal organization that exists usually to do a societal good. Okay. and does not generate profits, typically like a for-profit corporation such as a C Corp, LLC, or another for-profit legal structure. So in essence, that's historically what it has been. Oftentimes you'll see a charity, a church, or a ministry, or in other countries call it an NGO, non-governmental organization, be able to, for example, if you're trying to, do, I don't know, let's say create clean water, you might start a nonprofit organization to raise funds where the people who write you a check get a tax deductible receipt in order to lower their tax base, and then that's considered a charitable contribution. And so, how I got into this, what I would say is in my book, I think, when I first got into this 28 years ago, I was not made aware, coming out of school with a ministry degree, that if you wanted to do good, that you can actually launch solve a problem, and that you don't have to limit yourself to a nonprofit organization, but you can actually do great good in a for-profit organization, or what I've learned to do over the last couple of years, leverage both models to accomplish a good. So that's what I want to share and express to people, that you can do great by owning for-profit businesses, even in a nonprofit structure like we've been able to do with Entrenuity.
Excellent. And we'll talk a little bit more about Entrenuity and what you do in a little bit later on.
Sure.
Now, Khary, so we got two heads. We got private equity and we got philanthropy. So which one you want to lean in first, private equity or philanthropy? Because I don't think in our community we know much about philanthropy, other than that 2 years ago at the Morehouse graduation, a billionaire came and paid off everybody's student loan at graduation. Right. That was a philanthropic gift, right? That he wrote off. So help us understand this.
So philanthropy is birthed in America as just a long tradition of folks with wealth doing things for public good. Often it's a donation. Many of our nation's largest newspapers were supported by philanthropy. Often it was a family that would sort of support that thing, even though it ran as a business, it often ran at a deficit. So it was sort of these contributions to the community. We saw the rise of nonprofits, these organizations that are being funded by philanthropists. So I spent a lot of time in nonprofit sector. And then when I went into philanthropy about 15 years ago, I was on the other side of the desk, sort of receiving grants instead of writing them, and then making decisions on how we would disperse the dollars that we had as a foundation at certain number of years. So had the privilege to work for one of the larger philanthropies that serve churches and Christian organizations. And so having seen that and done that, it's a lot of good that you can do in philanthropy. A lot of our think tanks that craft public policy are actually nonprofits that are supported by different philanthropies. And so there's a good and bad to that, right? With philanthropy, you can influence agendas and do things. So part of our job is to always make sure that philanthropy is transparent, make sure that people are being able to say, who did you fund and why did you fund it? Anonymous gifts do exist, but there is some accountability that we want to have in the system. So good philanthropy does that. And is always accountable to the community. Bad philanthropy is not accountable. So that's the difference between philanthropy and that connection between nonprofits. And that's a big part of my work, working with foundations, working with private donors, working with individuals. Spend a lot of time doing that, working with family offices. And this is basically when wealthy people have means, they often put together an office for someone to manage their wealth. They often establish a philanthropy that then does things in addition to the work that they do in terms of their investments. So, so that's the world that I've come out of. And now I'm in
private equity.
And I found my way there. Well, the truth is I've been owning businesses since I was 16. So my first company was a t-shirt company that I launched with my best friend. And this is now my fifth company. And so, I always say, just because you have a job doesn't mean that is your only job. So you should have a job and always have a side conversation around things that can build you wealth, even if it's just a matter of learning. So this is my 5th business. And this time I stepped away from my work in philanthropy now to do private equity. And private equity is just another way of moving money into an organization. We just move money into companies, but instead of giving it to them, we take an equity piece or a share of the ownership for a certain period of time. But the way we make our money is that we invest in a company, we sell that share at some point in time, either back to the owners or to somebody else who actually wants to buy a share in that company.
All right. So everyone and our guests tonight, you get a full spectrum of what we're talking about. 50 plus years ago, 1968, when we're talking about the civil rights movement, we're talking about getting people to vote, getting people to move politics and get our elected officials in. But this is a different game. And I think if we had Stokely Carmichael here or Dr. King, certainly Malcolm X or Marcus Garvey, if they were with us today, they would say this is the conversation that they would want to have, because they want to talk about money. They want to talk about service. They want to talk about home ownership. So let's move to the next stage and give me a little idea about entrepreneurship, how you're a birthplace for entrepreneurs, but as well as you have business to sustain you, Brian. Talk to me a little bit there.
Sure. So entrepreneurship was started in 1999 after I got fired from a company, actually an Atlanta-based company called Kidsway. And I had spent probably about 7 to 10 years in the area of youth entrepreneurship education, primarily in the urban context on the south and west sides of Chicago. Simply teaching youth and their families, what entrepreneurship, the fundamentals of entrepreneurship, and what that looks like through structured curriculums, business camps, after-school programs. I mean, you name it, we taught it wherever we could teach it at. And so I spent about 7 to 10 years on the programmatic side. But then when make a long story short, when the economy crashed, we knew that we had to change our delivery system. So we had been doing pretty much in-person trainings. It was about that time when we were just touching into social media. Some of you, I remember when there was no social media.
Exactly.
And we were simply saying that we had to move into a new era that did not require us to do all the trainings in person. We developed another curriculum model called Starting Up Now, which is a web-based business platform, and so on. And but the one thing that we realized during that period, entrepreneurship, unlike most nonprofits, I never grew up in the nonprofit culture, meaning that I didn't know how the business model worked, in the sense that you go around and ask for donations, you go around and raise capital and all that. Community where I come from, and I'm an African American community, didn't know anything about writing a check for a donation other than the church. I remember when I graduated from college, I got a job, what I thought was a job offer from a ministry that I won't name. And I remember coming back home and telling my dad, I got an opportunity, but you're gonna have to write me another check because there's a thing called raising support. And that was not a pleasant conversation, where he had been writing checks for 5 years and I had to ask him to write another one. So that didn't go well. And so, but that was my experience. And then from learning that and being in this field, I learned that you had to have what we call a nice catchphrase that we can say today because everybody talks about it. But back then I didn't know what it was, called sustainability. And so I had always been able to teach entrepreneurship programs and get paid from your client. In my case, usually a school, after school program. But then I could also go back to the donor and say the school could put in, if you could put in 70%, I have a school ministry organization that will put in 30. And so that was the way I built entrepreneurship up, and had never taken taxpayer dollars. And got it to the point where it was we call it the 70-30 principle. That's what I really push and teach. 70% of your revenue goes towards programmatic activities. Only 30% goes towards operational administrative costs. In that model, we found that we were able to attract more and more donations, and the fact that donors love the fact that I was sustainable and I was not dependent upon their donations to run my organization. And so that's the model. That's how it grew. And now we own coffee shops. We're launching a fund. Just purchased a building on Michigan Avenue, which is going to have a enterprise level co-work space where Black, Brown, and Latinx and women entrepreneurs can basically operate their businesses from. And then we have a craft coffee shop on the first floor that's also run and managed by an African-American young lady named Khary Pendleton. And we were able to purchase another coffee shop last year called the Common Cup in Rogers Park. If you know the community, is up on the north side of Chicago. So the one thing that we found is that the less dependent we were on donors, the more attractive we became to donors. And so we've been able to build our revenue up from about 7 years ago from about $500,000 to a little over $2.5 million this past year from owning and operating businesses.
Wow. And we're going to touch back to how we can get to that 730 principle. So before I jump to houses, I want to know, Khary, can you tell us why an equity firm makes sense in the Black community in 2020? I mean, can we do that? Is that something feasible to be done?
Well, there's only two ways if you have a business to raise money, right? Somebody buys a chunk of you, or you go take out a loan, unless you got a rich uncle who's going to give you some money. So that's kind of the challenge, is that in the Black community, most folks who start a business, they work a job, they have some retirement or some savings. They take that savings, leave their job, and start their company. The challenge is that, so you started your company, now what? And everybody runs into this capital crunch where, okay, you done bought the restaurant, you got the food, but now you need to do a renovation. How do you go get the dollars to get that renovation so you can compete with the coffee shop down the street? That's where Black folks run into trouble, is that then we don't have the credit history, or we don't have favorable relationships with banks. So we have to go find money from somewhere else. And unfortunately, the history of financing companies in America has been, they've denied us access to banking, and we know that that's well documented, but also we've been denied access to the private marketplace. And there are billions and billions of dollars sitting there. Right now, we have what's called dry powder, all this money that private equity firms have raised, where people say, hey, I'm giving you money to invest, but those companies haven't invested that money yet. Yet we have Black businesses collapsing right now because they can't get at cash. So our conversation is, no, now is the perfect time to convince the private market that there are Black businesses that have proven, demonstrated business models that you really ought to be investing in. And if you think about it, you can invest at a steal. Their valuation in the marketplace is lower than their true value. And so if you're really smart, invest now, you can make some real money as those businesses grow so they can compete with others. So now is the perfect time to invest.
Absolutely.
So now is the perfect time to invest. And that means to encourage Black people to be entrepreneurs. Instead of being employees, they can be employers. Is that what I hear you saying?
I'm saying be both. So, go get a job, learn a skill, make the relationships. And as you start that job, have a side gig. And I'm not just talking about, to put a little extra money in your pocket, but begin to test the waters in terms of becoming an entrepreneur. And then at some point, when you've demonstrated that you have some credibility in the marketplace through your years of experience, you understand basics of business, then that's again a shift and sort of pivot, like I did from going from working a job now I did it wrong when I was young. I graduated college, started a software company, didn't have any experience. I just got married, and me and my new wife were trying to learn business and trying to take care of a new household. That's not how to do it. Get a job, learn some skills, and after you have those skills, then you pivot. But yeah, everybody should always be thinking of themselves as entrepreneurs. Whether you have a job, quote unquote job or not, you're always an entrepreneur. It's not just the salary that you're looking for, it's the learning and the experience so you can put yourself in a position of wealth.
Excellent.
You get a better tax break, right?
Oh, yes, because you can write all that off.
So Sharon, I want to come to you because I got a whole bunch of history for you. We got the 1619 project that says we've been here for over 400 years. You got 40 acres and a mule that General Sherman promised black people down here in the South Carolina, Georgia state. And then we've got the FHA right after World War II, and there were black people fighting in every single war here. And wealth in this country didn't start from an equity firm. Some people may have had it, but it didn't start from an equity firm, and they didn't get it necessarily from entrepreneurship. They were working and they owned a house. I want to know, since black people have been here since the country started, how come we own the least amount of property and homes in this place? Can you give me some help to this?
Well, first of all, I want my 40 acres and a mule.
Okay.
I've got to figure out how to get it, because
All right.
I was not born in this country, but I've been here working really hard for the last 40 years. Okay. So I think that should count for something, right?
Absolutely.
I think it should. But our number one way for black people to transfer equity and wealth is through home ownership. Okay? That's the number one way. And a lot of us, I don't know what's happening, but we're not seeming to get that. We're not teaching our young folks to buy houses. Our young folks, I don't know what's happening or where we went wrong, but something got off track somewhere there, okay? They're focusing on the name brands and the high sneakers and the cars and all of this stuff, and they're not focusing on home ownership. Home ownership is the number one thing that keeps our community together. It keeps families together. Do you know that when a child feels secure at home, that they learn better when they go to school? They're not worrying about where they're coming home to, right? I've been in real estate since 2003. We went through the down market, we went through the up market, we went through the short sale. I used to pull in front of someone's home and the look on the kids' faces when they don't know if their parents are going to lose the home. Because, you know, as parents, I know that I used to do it, and I don't know if you guys have kids, but we think our kids are not listening, right? We're talking at night. We think we're whispering to our spouses, and we don't understand that we bring that worry and we bring it to our children. When they go to school, they leave in the mornings. They don't know if they're coming home to a home, right? And they can't concentrate when they get to school. And that becomes a problem. If we don't buckle down and get it together and tell our kids what it is that they have to do, because, you know, young folks, we have a tendency of saying that they're, you know, looking at the future and they're thinking that the future is going to be bad because of these young people. But I think the problem is we're not teaching them. We're pushing them to the side and thinking, oh, okay, they don't know nothing. When we were their age, we didn't know nothing either. But somebody taught us, right?
That's right. That's right.
And as Khary said, he did it the wrong way. He should have, you know, went and got a job and figured it out and get some experience first. All of us should have done it that way. I don't know about Brian, I don't know about Jimmy, but I didn't do it that way either. I did it the wrong way, okay? And we did not have the examples in our community that we can look at and say, okay, this person is buying up all of this property and they're willing to share their experience with us and they're willing to share what they're doing and the steps. We now, right now, it's not too late. We need to help each other. If I know about a property or if I know how to get a property, whether it's credit that's holding us back, whether it's lack of savings for down payment, because that's one of our biggest problems in our community. But there is so many ways around these things that we can help each other. But the problem that we have is that we're not, I believe in each one, teach one, right? So what I learned, even tonight from you guys, everybody on the panel, I'm going to take that back and I'm going to share it with someone and in hopes for them to share it with someone else, right? And that's what we need to do. We need to get our young people together. We need to get our old people together. We need to get everybody together and sit at the family table. The holidays are coming up. I know COVID is, having all of us going crazy, but I'm sure we're going to have Thanksgiving dinner somewhere, even if we're doing it on Zoom together.
Shut up. You know you're right.
Okay. We need to have a conversation about home ownership, and we stop talking about it like it's a dirty word. Legacy.
Legacy.
Building wealth. We need to talk about life insurance.
That's right.
My children are going to be okay. They're going to be better than okay. They're going to be like, my mama really loved me. Man.
And we need to talk about gentrification, right? So we shouldn't be mad that everybody's moving in a neighborhood when we could buy our own homes. Is that correct?
No, but you know what? Let me tell you something, Jimmy. We get mad because somebody else comes in our neighborhood and buy it.
That's right.
And the only time that we want to buy it is when Walmart and everybody else comes on the corner and fix it up. By the time they get here, it's late. Do you understand?
Yeah.
We need to take that boarded up house and we need to do something about it. We all need to get together. And if you got $2,000, Brian got $2,000, Khary got $2,000, we put it together and we go and buy that boarded up house. Figure out how to fix it up and do what we have to do for our community. Stop waiting for somebody to come in and save us, because ain't nobody coming.
That's right.
Well, the ones that come ain't saving us. They kicking us out. That's exactly what they're doing.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So go ahead. Go ahead, Brian. You going to jump in?
No, that was Khary. Go ahead, Khary.
Go ahead, Khary.
I was saying just a big part of it, though, is the culture that we have of focusing on how much you make versus how much you keep. And
yes.
So when you switch that equation, right, it's not your income that's relevant, right? And so when you get ready to take a job, it's not the salary that you should be paying attention to. It's what will you learn in that experience, because it's that skill, it's that training, it's that understanding. Do you understand that industry? Do you understand what that owner has to do to actually make money? If you're in a nonprofit, do you understand their business model? Do you look at their budget? Once you figure that out, like what Brian has figured out is that the budget dictates how you get capital in the door. Because at the end of the day, I had companies, I was happy to have a company, but I ain't make no money. And at the end of the day, if you go through the exercise and you don't have profit, but a lot of folks, they are so fixated on looking like they're successful that they miss the principles of what success looks like. So I've talked to people about, hey, we should buy this piece of property. Oh, I don't want that beat up building. And I'm like, the building is not how it looks. It's what is its value. If it's being sold at a lower price and we can sell it or fix it or renovate it, it's about how much money you made, not how you look or perceived. And that's the fundamental difference between owners and consumers. And that's the real shift that has to happen. And it's not just in business, it's also in nonprofit. Are you someone who can consistently attract others because you're, or are you just focusing on how big you are and all the activity you've done?
So let me go to Brian now. Brian, so you did something in your book about this neighborhood that has so many nonprofits in there, right?
Sure.
And you said that one particular community always had money coming in, but this other nonprofit didn't. And that's what caused you to think about No More. Why don't you explain that so people can get an idea and go get this book, No More Profits?
Sure. I was at had been in the industry and understand the nonprofit industry is an industry. You have to understand that if you want to go into any business, any opportunity, understand what you're walking into. Things like when, like Khary said and Sharon said, the mistakes we made. The mistake I made is I thought because I had a bleeding heart and wanted to serve, that I was walking into this industry and I knew nothing about it, and didn't know that there was competition within ministries, within churches, within organizations for you're competing for donor dollars. So make no mistake about it. Those are the things that I did not know when I came into this. That was my mistake. So part of writing No More was when I was frustrated after getting denied for a grant. Believe me, if you're going to get into this nonprofit work, I was chasing a lot of grant opportunities and they have really never worked for me. And so I was frustrated, and I came back and I was like, I'm done with this model. I don't want to touch this model again. No more. Literally, that's what the book title was initially, NOW. But then once I began doing the research and once I began to think about and reflect, I said, no, there's a way to make the nonprofit model work. And so the NO became KNOW, that if I had to look at myself 20 years ago, what are the things that I would wanted to know more about this industry? And so the book is titled No More, Moving from Dependency to Sustainability. What I figured out, what I learned is that, and Khary said it earlier, you can develop relationships, and the relationships are the key to developing capital opportunities as well. And also, like Khary said, the one thing there's a couple things that you find out really, really quickly. You must have good, solid financials, period. There's three things that we teach when we call it the 3 T's: transparency, always tell the truth, equals trust. And once you have someone's trust, money is not, and I say this very, 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 very carefully, money is not the issue in America, okay? It's access to the capital and being able to show and identify that you actually have a problem, to a solution to a problem. We put a play on PSA. Most people think of public service announcement. We say problem, solution, marketplace, action. Identify the problem, create a solution, and initiate a marketplace action. And you will oftentimes find that we like a tagline that we say or we've heard is that we want to take people from ideas to invoices, because people are looking for solutions. And so what we've been able to figure out in our model as Entrenuity, that yes, so for me, I lack the opportunity to keep receiving grants. And so I figured out grants, going through the traditional way of reaching out to a foundation that I didn't know was not working for me. But I was able to connect with some key people, many of them white, who often saw the same challenges in the urban context, and they create a solution as well. And so they partnered with me. And this is what you learn really, really quickly. Once you have solid partners, and once you have people who believe in you and trust you, respect you, they don't try to make you change from who you are. They never, those are the kind of people that I have supported me. They were interested in the solutions. And so that's what we had, a very solution-oriented approach. And so the money was not the issue. The issue was, can you solve this problem? How do you manage your operational resources, which is extremely important, because you want to keep costs down. You want to keep program directed resources towards the programs and not keep your costs so high. So that 70-30 principle was one of the things. I sat down with a CEO, and he told me, and I was frustrated. And I told him, I said, I'm not going to mention his name, but he said, Brian, whatever you do, the fact that you can raise money from me to help solve this problem, kids not being able to learn entrepreneurship principles in an after-school program, and keep your costs less than 30 to 35%, and that you're not dependent completely on my funds, I'm very attracted to that model. Never changed that model. This was 20 years ago, and I was really, really, really struggling. Thank God for a believing wife, my wife, because there would be no opportunity if it wasn't for Dr. Janae Jenkins. So let me put that out there very plain. Yes. Who always believed and supported me. And then this other guy, I'll mention his name. He used to be the CEO of Service Master, his name is William Pollard. He's a hard driver. And he said, Brian, whatever you do, don't change your model, because the fact that you can generate revenue, from your client that believes in your product and your service, and you can generate revenue from me, that model of sustainability is a model that's going to really grow your organization. So being able to solve the problem, and being able to develop trust, truth, and transparency with your supporters, because I look at them as investors, and they've really, really helped us go from being a $500,000 organization to a little more than $2 million. And we're doing on December 2, when we launch our new building, we're doing what we call a capital matchmaker, where we're introducing 3 different entrepreneurs that are Black, and Latinx to be to our investment network, so they can get capital, get introduced to our network to for investment as well. So what Sharon said about passing it on is extremely important. You learn these principles and then you don't hold on to them, and then but you have to apply them. Make your 990s public. You may make your audit available, and put it in your annual report. Those are the non-negotiables that you just do. And a lot of times in our communities, we don't do that.
Well, we're going to have to explain what 990s to everybody. We just got all our 990s done in the impact movement.
Yep.
So we'll explain that. But I want everyone to hear what he's saying about a solution or a problem and then coming up with a solution. There's a business, you may have heard of it, Sharon, that's blowing up all over the city. And she didn't go to Shark Tank. It's a place called Slutty Vegan.
Yes.
Am I right? And I've not eaten there, but I know people who know her. My wife is a vegetarian. They just opened up on Edgewood, another site. And when they open up, because I think they were a food truck before they opened up, the line was wrapped around the building before the pandemic. And now she's opened up a brand new site in the midst of the pandemic, and she's going to get business right in Edgewood because that's right around the corner from Dr. Martin Luther King. It's called Slutty Vegan. So the problem was Black people weren't eating healthy. So she came up with a vegan-based diet and menu that people enjoy and love. That doesn't have meat, but it also gives people the enjoyment of eating rich, flavorful food. And so that was a problem. And she came up with a solution. Go ahead.
I want to say a shout out because she's Jamaican, just like me.
Oh, shut up. The Jamaicans have done it again. Yeah. All right.
Okay. So she has a Jamaican mom, and she infused what she learned and her culture into that. And she, from the way her story goes, this young lady, she was going to college and just needed some money. And she took what her mom taught her and put it to work. And next thing you know,
she's making it. And I think she's a Spelman grad, am I correct?
She is.
She went to Spelman. So it's Spelman College. So it's a shout out to our HBCUs.
Yes.
So let me turn the corner a little bit now to talk about philanthropy instead of private equity with Khary. So the only thing we know about in the Black community about philanthropy is where we give our money, and that's the church.
Sure.
Give us an idea now of Black Black philanthropists who have really can give back or a practice that they can learn.
So, I mean, honestly, Black folks are some of the highest givers in terms of percentages of resources anywhere on the planet, right? So, yes, we give to churches, but we also give to all sorts of organizations. You don't often have a billionaire that sort of writes multi-million checks, $1 million checks, but there are a lot of thousandaires out there who are writing $100 checks all the time. And when you figure that out, you can realize like organizations like Salvation Army, their typical gift is very, very small, but they actually know how to engage large numbers of people. So part of the conversation is if you're in a nonprofit, you learn how to build the relationships with people where they believe in you. They trust that their money is going to go for good work. They trust that you're doing good things in the community, and they will write you checks. Your job is to receive those checks. So sometimes it's a foundation. Sometimes it's a business owner. Sometimes it's grandmama down the street. And what you begin to do is you hone your story of your organization, and you hone your story of the financials of the organization. If you really want large dollars, and you say, this is what I'm doing, this is what it takes to do it, and you have a good conversation, and folks will bring you those resources. And really what it is you're inviting them to partner with you. And that's one of the things is that giving financial is not something you throw money over a wall. When you make a donation, you become a partner in that ministry, and people really find great value in that. But you have to be willing to ask, and that is how do you bring money into your work? Like, in the same skill that you use to raise money in a nonprofit, you're going to need the same skill if you ever go into business, because instead of raising donors, you're raising investors. But it's the same kind of relationship. It's the same kind of conversation. So the sooner you can learn that skill, that is a transferable skill that will help you when you start your own company. You will want to sit down with the same kind of folks and say, hey, listen, I'm starting my company. This is what it can do. This is how much it costs. Will you invest in me? That's the same thing that you have to do as a nonprofit organization.
So if I remember correctly, there was a story in Mississippi of a woman that used to clean buildings. And at the end of her life, she gave $300,000 away to a nonprofit or maybe to the school to fund scholarships. Am I correct? So it's not the issue of having a lot of money. It's the issue of what you do with the funds that you have right now. Is that correct?
That's the whole game. I mean, honestly, I was a financial advisor for years, and I sat with people who looked like they had a lot of money because they had the cars, they had the clothes, they had the house. And then I sat with people who didn't look like they had the money. And the difference was, what did you do with your checkbook? You live beneath your means or not? And it's really hard because you think, oh, I got my first job. I remember my first job in college, I went and got a stereo system, right? And I had other friends, they got their first job, right? They paid off some bills, right? I got my first job, I went and got a credit card, right? And then ran up tax. So learning to manage your own personal finances is critical, because your credit is what people will look at when they want to give you a loan as a small business owner. And also how you manage your personal finances will dictate if they want to invest in your nonprofit as well. I see so many people, they drive up to a donor and a car that's too expensive, right? And then say, I need money. And a person like, your car look better than mine, right? I know how much watch it. Why would I give you money, right? And it's not just a show, it's actually demonstrating wisdom. Do you know what money is for? And do you know what to do with money? That's the key, is that once you understand what money is for, and that's a kingdom principle, money is not for stuff. Money is a measure of responsibility. So if you have $10 in your banking account, that's 10 units of responsibility that before the Lord, you have to figure out, Lord, what did I do with these 10 units? If you got 100 units, that doesn't mean you're better than the person with 10. You just have a different amount of responsibility. And so when you see money that way, then you think very, very differently about what you do with your money, right? And this is why you got to be careful who you hang out with, because if they're wasting money on stuff, you get sucked into the same cycle. But once you demonstrate that you can be trusted with money, you will attract more money. Once you can be trusted that you know what money is for, that you respect the money you have, people who understand money, respect money, will say, that person gets it, and I'm willing to give them more because they respect it. And especially you work hard for your money, you're not going to give it to somebody who doesn't respect it, right? Same as a parent. That's how donors are. That's how investors are.
Wow. So let me get to Sharon now. Sharon, so we understand that some people find it easier to buy a pair of Jordans than they are to save up for a house. And so we got a college student. He or she just graduated. They got $30,000 worth of student debt. And yet you're telling them quit getting an apartment. You want them to purchase a house. So help me to understand what you would tell a student or someone who's getting ready to graduate from college, how they can be in the position to own a home in the neighborhood they grew up in.
So, good question. A couple of things that I actually just found out, right? Because I have a 32-year-old and I have a 25-year-old, and he just bought his first house, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because his mom is not playing. You want to buy Jordan? Okay. Every Jordan that you buy, I need the same amount of money in the kitty towards the house. Okay? So he got his first house. So kudos to him. So with that said, it's a little difficult, especially we're pushing, it's a catch-22, right? We're pushing our children to get this education. We're pushing them to get that piece of paper because, in our culture, can't get a job without having that piece of paper, right? Because you need that to even get through the door. But then you get the piece of paper and it's really not worth anything anymore because you can't get a job. So it's like a cycle, right? And then now you're stuck with 70, 80, upwards 100,000 in student loans. What are you supposed to be doing? Okay. And the job that you're supposed to be getting, can't really get it because they're not even paying. As Mr. Khary said, you're not supposed to be looking at so much the money that they're offering, but it's kind of hard for these young people because they have $80,000 in student loans. So what are they supposed to do, right? So one of the things that I found out lately, and a friend of mine that's in the mortgage industry, because we had a client, if they're on a forbearance, it's no good.
Mhm.
If they have a document that says that their payment, that they're on a payment plan, even if their payment plan is zero, that's a wonderful thing. Okay, it's called income-based payment plan. If they have that documentation that shows that they're doing that, they can qualify for a loan. But if they don't have that, the loan officers are going to count at least 1% towards that, right? So they're going to take, say for instance, if they have 200,000 for in student loan, they're going to take $2,000 and add that onto their DTI, and that's not going to be good. Okay, so whenever we're talking to them, if they cannot avoid getting all of these student loans, we have to make sure that they're in a repayment plan, even if the repayment plan is zero.
And DTI is debt to income.
Income, yes, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You throw out these acronyms, right? And then we're like, what do they mean, right? So you have to make sure that it lines up. There's another little secret that I tell my young folks, and this also goes back to the gentrification thing. If you can go and purchase a home in a neighborhood that's not so fancy and not, all fixed up, it's going to bring future equity. And especially if you get a multi-unit.
Exactly.
House hacking, right? Live on one side of it, and
that's right.
The property pay for you living there. Okay? So it's like you going to college, you're in college, you get an apartment. Don't get a 1-bedroom apartment because you want to floss and you thinking that, all of that. Get yourself a 2, 3, 4-bedroom apartment and rent it out, and you can live for free. It's the same exact way. Yes, Ken.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what we did when we bought our first house. It was multifamily, and rented it out. Yeah.
Okay, I grew up in New York, so it was like you rent every floor out. I was 19 years old when I bought my first house, and the interest rate, the interest rate was crazy.
Almost double digit back then.
No,
right?
not almost. It was like 14%. Okay, and I didn't know but I thought that was good. I had to live somewhere, and that's what people don't seem to understand. We all have to live someplace. You're paying somebody else's mortgage, whether it's your mortgage or somebody else's, but you're paying somebody's mortgage. You gotta live somewhere. So instead of what my advice to these young people is, stop looking at what your friends got, okay? And focus on what you want to do and what your future looks like in the next 5 years. I mean, I know with COVID and everything, we're a little scared because we're like, okay, what do you want to do in the future? You want to stay alive. That's what we want to do, right? But if we get through this, which we will, we're very strong people. We just got to stay vigilant and wash our hands and, do what we've got to do. But with that said, keeping ourselves healthy, not only physically, but financially, right? And during this time, sit down and look at the fact that you couldn't go to Starbucks, you couldn't go to the mall, you couldn't go all over the place and whatever, and see how much money you've spent. I took my bank statement March and April, and I started canceling stuff that I didn't even know that I was paying on an automatic payment, because we're all doing it. We all got stuff coming out that we didn't even know we got coming out, okay? And it might be something simple as iTunes or whatever, just something small. These apps that we're using in our phones, they're charging us and we don't even realize that. If we take that and we put something little at a time to come up with our little down payment, because that's a big problem that we've got in our community. We don't have nobody giving us no down payment. We don't have nobody believing in us and saying, okay, let me just tell you something. You're trying to do something with yourself. Let me help you out and giving you a couple $1,000s to buy that house. We don't have anybody sitting with our young people and telling them to stop running up them credit cards. Okay?
Mhm.
The t-shirt that you're getting as soon as you walk through the college campus, it costs you a lot of money because you apply for that credit card to get a t-shirt.
Mhm.
Like, sir,
Yeah.
okay? We got to have these conversations before they get to college, Jimmy. We got to have that conversation at the dinner table. Teach our young people how to pay bills and stop hiding the bills from them.
That's true too.
Explaining to them why we have a problem at home. Okay, instead of hiding all the bills from them. When the bills come, we taking them and hiding them because the kids, you know, we don't want the kids to know that we got some problems and the light might get cut off.
So what we're talking about now is financial responsibility, helping people understand how to pay bills, how to save, and then have a vision beyond something that's going to be disposable, something that dies, like a brand new car.
Yeah,
I stopped buying brand new cars because the minute you drive it off the lot, you left $3,000 right there on the lot. So you buy a used car and let somebody else pay for that. And you can still drive a brand new, a nice Toyota for the next 300,000 miles, because a car only does one major thing. It takes you from one place to another. It don't matter how it looks or what you're driving, as much as it gets you from those places, because you don't live in cars. In fact,
no, you don't. But you know, when you're in the kind of work that I'm in, and the gentleman, I think it was Brian or Mr. Khary, they hit it right on the head. It's like, all of this is pretend and the show and show me, because you're out here showing. And I'll tell you a story real quick, and I'll think. I was driving a Honda. I think it was an Accord or something. I don't know. I just put gas in it and I clean it. I mean, that's all I care about, right? It's the point B. And a colleague saw me at the car wash and mentioned, "You're driving that? I thought that you would have been driving something a little bit, you know, up there." I said, "Why? I don't have a car payment."
Wow.
Right? I don't have a car payment. So this kind of mentality that we all have it's like it rubs off, right?
It does.
I came home and I mentioned it to my husband and I said that to him, and he turned around, he looked at me and he said, "But you can buy any car that you want. Okay, it's up to you. You're the one that decided not to, you know, purchase a high-end car." But one of the reasons why I did not, I've owned all of them. I've had all of them. The economy came, went, whatever. I lost it all. And this time around, I'm doing it the smart way. Okay. We would go to people's homes, pulling up in a Mercedes, and they are losing their homes. And you're looking at them like, how could you understand what they're going through, right? And you're pulling up into this big $80,000 car. Well, my husband turned around because of my colleagues, I guess, which, whatever. And for my birthday, a couple of birthdays ago, he purchased me another Mercedes. The first thing I said to him was, apart from thank you, is who's going to pay for it? Because I'm not. My Honda was paid for. I appreciate it. But because of the fact that, you know, everybody's trying to impress everybody, I don't have nobody to impress anymore. Okay, but it happens because of the peer pressure. So what are we going to tell our kids? If they see what we're doing, right? So we have to lead by example.
Exactly.
We do. We have to lead by example. So we have to replace all the stuff and start buying homes, buildings. Right. We have to start buying the block.
The stuff that can last longer. You know, Vernon Johns is the former pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, and his congregation hated him. So they actually fired him because they didn't want a radical pastor. After the sermons were over, he would have on a pair of overalls, and he'll reach behind the pulpit and pull up a catfish and a pile of turnip greens, because he was an entrepreneur. And then he said, "You want to see perpetual motion? He said, tell a black man to drive his Cadillac, park his Cadillac on land that he owns.
Mm.
And he said, that's perpetual motion, because he was trying to help us understand,
Mhm.
and the Christian community, that ownership is a place of power in the world we're in today. So I want to talk a little bit to you about solution-based problems, Brian, and get with you. So identify for today's generation who may not have an idea of a problem, give us a lower shelf problem that you would tell a young person to say, that's a problem that needs to be solved today.
Well, a tagline that I like to think about is calamity creates opportunity. And, you know, we are in a period right now where there are many people that are looking at ways to solve this problem with COVID. So, or other problems that we may see. For example, this is not something that originated with me, but I just heard the other day that we know that health clubs, you know, are challenged right now. You know,
Exactly.
But what one of the health clubs here in Chicago is doing is leasing their equipment to its members. Okay. So you have to look at, see, and I think it was either Khary or Sharon or even maybe you, Jimmy, that said it's the community that you keep that helps you develop these ideas. If you are not around solution-oriented people, do not expect to come up with solutions. My dad used to have this saying when I was a kid to keep me out of trouble. He said he'd always say, you know, football players run with football players, baseball players run with baseball players, and fools run with fools. Be careful. Be careful about who you associate yourself with.
I love that.
One of the things that I did, you know, and when you're in an entrepreneurial culture, you want to be around other entrepreneurs and problem solvers. And you quickly learn that, I call it, you know, you can either be a solution maker or a dream killer. You know, which side of the aisle do you want to be on? And so when I had my problem of trying to raise money, it was part of the question that you asked me, and I didn't answer it all the way. I just want to make sure I get that out there. My challenge was we had part of my book and the research, we had determined that out of all these ministries that were in Chicago, there was $37 million. There was $40 million given away to ministries that were primarily in the Black urban communities in Chicago. But out of those ministries, 16 of them were run by white men and women that had set up their ministry in a Black community or Latinx community. The white ministries, this is my problem, why I wrote no more, got 37 million of the $40 million that was given. My problem is that I'm like thinking, why, you know, we're fighting over the $2 million and no one ever told me this. You know what I mean? So I'm sitting there thinking, how do we solve this problem? And my problem was one thing that I've learned is that it's not the nonprofit solution is not the solution for a community that's struggling. So what I like to think when I talk to my colleagues and my peers and those in my network, my donors, my investors, I said, we need taxpayers in our community. We don't need any more nonprofits, you know, to be set up that are not a tax-bearing, that's not a tax-bearing business. So when I bought our building, they asked me, they said, well, do you want it as a nonprofit way? Do you want to take it off the tax rolls? I said, no, because the minute that we took it off the tax rolls, we could not have for-profit businesses renting space from us. You know, we developed the aldermen in the business community. We need for-profit businesses. So yes, you can, as a nonprofit, create opportunities, create jobs. We have about 40 people working for Entrenuity. When you add all the business, the coffee shops up and the staff up, and guess what? In this COVID challenge that we're in, they're looking at. I'll be frank. We bought the other coffee shop while other coffee shops were closing because and Sharon could appreciate this because we leveraged the equity in the building that we purchased. That building appreciated. I'm not going to tell you how much, but it appreciated. It's on Michigan Avenue. Just put it like that. That equity allowed us to be able to survive and thrive in COVID, while coffee shops and other ministries were struggling. And let me be clear, my investors were a key part of this. Don't get me wrong. You know, I don't want to brag. It's not something I did myself. It's they're in a relationship with me. They see the problem, they see the opportunity, and they're saying, Brian, we're going to help you not only get through with this, but we're going to help you thrive through this process. So we are to pick up another coffee shop. And guess what?
Right.
We're trying to look at more, because opportunity creates opportunity. And that's what I want young people to think about. Look at the problem, get around some solution makers, because in this era, in this day, in this era that we're in today, you can find many solutions, you know, from people like us, people like Jimmy, Sharon, Khary, myself, but also all the social media platforms and networks. Don't just follow the ones that are, you know, the fun things, but go and find out the things that are going to create opportunity, you know, and look and identify, how do you pull your money together, not only to buy a house, but how do you pull your money together to create a solution to possibly launch a business or get involved with an equity play like Khary's talking about as well? Because that's the next direction that we're going in, is how do we create a fund, you know, in order to invest in Black, Brown, and women-owned businesses, because we want to have, we want to be, I've been on these calls now. There's things called a term, learn this term, called a convertible note.
Yes. Yes.
There are terms you cannot, and I'll say this and I'll be quiet. You must learn the terms and the language of this industry. If we were going to go play a sport, you got to learn what that sport is all about. If you're going to get into this industry, you know, you need to know how it functions. When someone says a word that you do not know, write it down, put it in your machine, and look it up.
Brian,
you know,
Brian,
it's your responsibility.
Let me say something, Brian, and you hit on this. When you have a track record and you have a relationship, people will bring you deals. Right now, I don't even have to go look for companies. I'm getting calls from and we just started. Right, people are saying, "Okay, Khary, I know somebody who wants to invest in a Black business. Can you find me one that has 20 million in revenue or more?" And I'm like, I got 10 of them. Right, it's the relationships and the track record. But you know, I stopped watching sports. Now, don't get mad at me, because that time
he's up there in Detroit, Brian. That's why he stopped watching. He don't have many to watch. All right, go ahead. Near Detroit. Go ahead, Khary. Go ahead.
Money is my sport.
Okay, I got you.
No, I get you.
All right, Sharon got you. Go ahead, Khary.
Yeah, I talk to folks and they can tell me every sports player. They can tell me, you know, the stats, they can tell you all the stuff. Like, are they putting any money in your pocket? So part of the conversation is no more money. And when you do that, that's how you end up putting yourself in a position where you have enough knowledge that someone says this person is worth investing in. But when you can't talk the talk, you just show up with an idea, but you don't know what to do with the money. I talk to people, they say, I want to have a company. And the question is, well, how much do you need? And they can't tell you. That person is not serious. When you say, well, how are you going to make money? And they can't tell you the process. This is where you got to have a connection with someone who's done it before or done something similar. That's how you run with people who actually are doing what you want to do. Watch them close enough. So part of the question we talk about is how do you do that when you graduate college and you got all this debt? Well, part of the conversation is 2 jobs. If you have one job, you can get a second job. And people are like, well, I want to see my boyfriend. And listen, that can wait for later. If you can work one job, you can work a second job, take the second job and use the second job to pay off bills, have the second job dedicated to your student loans. Just change your lifestyle so that you function differently than other people. You'll find yourself positioned to do other things. That's the difference between those who own and those who don't. Part of it is when you understand that ownership is tied to freedom. Black folks knew this when we came out of slavery, but we got sharecroppers. And the first thing we did as a sharecropper was go buy a car. But work in somebody else's land. If you work for someone, you are a modern sharecropper. I don't care how much money you get paid. If you don't own the land, you're a sharecropper. So part of our job is to reposition ourselves so that we buy it. It doesn't matter if the land is small. It doesn't matter. The solution to gentrification is buy it yourself, right? If you don't
There
want
you go.
someone else to come in and buy your property, you buy it yourself. But go on, Sharon.
No, you done said it for. You done said it
speaking
for.
my language. Okay.
So tonight I got to tell you, I've done a disservice to our audience because normally I invite them to ask questions, and I don't even know if people are around. So if you got a quick question, please throw it at us now because we're about to shut the door. Because what I really want people to see, we're a campus ministry. We reach out to college students. So you got to go to our Facebook page and YouTube, and people will say to me, Jimmy, what are you excited about? I said, I'm excited about students knowing Jesus, but I also am excited about them transforming our communities and realizing that once they leave college, that they've got vocations, whether it's going to be like right now, if I was coming out of college, I would consider becoming a social worker because they're expecting the mental health business to grow 30% out of the pandemic. That's a problem. And so the solution is knowing that Black, Brown, and Latinx people do not go to mental health people, especially ones who are white. That means you got to create a business where people who look like them and understand the realities that they come from can have a mental health service, probably next to a doctor in our communities to help people mitigate all of the anxiety and the death that they've been managing. Like right now, 2 days ago, my nephew, his father died.
Yeah.
And they loved his dad. He had one lung and the other lung was working overtime. And now he's dead. Mom is not home. And so now what we're trying to do is figure out how to mitigate them through their mourning when you can't even be near them because of COVID. This is a good time to think about solutions after COVID. So right now, if I was a college student listening to someone right now, I would be thinking about what are the problems that need to be solved the minute the pandemic is over. Not only through it, but as soon as it's over, there's going to be a plethora of issues that are going to happen. For instance, homelessness is going to grow. All these people who can't pay rent, they're not going to have any help depends who wins, if there's no help to ease that pain. I already lived this during the Great Recession. So this is a great opportunity for purchase. This is a great opportunity to find commercial buildings so that you can have people live in those spaces. And this is a new space for even farming, like getting large plots of land so that we can have food to circulate in our community. So I need people to see that it is not unchristian to think about anything that they're talking about. If I had it to do all over, Sharon, I live in Grant Park. When I first moved here, people said, oh, Jimmy, go buy a house here. No one talked to me about this. And homes at that time was going for $28,000.
I know.
And now you can't buy a home over here for under $400,000.
I know.
So can you imagine? And so there's one white dude over here. When I was on the board of one of the local high schools, you know what his job was? He was taking care of properties, cutting grass, because he owns 17 homes in Grant Park that grew in his equity. He was renting the property, paid off, and he was just making money. And what he did, people laughed at him because he wore t-shirts and sweats because he was cutting off grass. But at the end of the day, when he went to his nice house, he was counting his money and people didn't laugh. He didn't hear their laughter inside his house. So we need to think through this process and then hopefully pivot students to be like Khary, because Khary, I think one of the great equity investors is someone named LeBron James. He's doing great equity in terms of schools, in terms of businesses, and how he's leveraging. Even Dr. Dre, I think Dr. Dre put a couple of $1 million in Beats and walked away with a $300 million profit from Apple. And so I think that's the way we're trying to get our students to pivot, because that's what our neighborhoods are going to need coming out of this. It doesn't really matter who is elected.
It doesn't matter.
Right? It doesn't matter, does it? It can be Biden or Trump. We got this work to do. Am I right?
We've got a lot of work to do because, as you mentioned, when we get out of this, a lot of people are going to be homeless. A lot of people are going to lose their homes. They're not going to have the income to even continue to pay their bills. And one of the other big problems that we have is that even in our community, even in my field, there's a lot of people that don't choose real estate professionals that look like me and you. Okay? They don't. My business partner, Michelle, and I are the only two minority owned women owners for a large franchise. Okay. And it is a big deal to us, but even a bigger deal to our families and the legacy that we're leaving them behind. Right. But a lot of the clients, when you pull up in front of someone's home or to show the property, or, you know, you see them there. And with now, there's a lot, by the way, there's like a million person. If the home is under $250,000 in Atlanta, Georgia, there's like 60 people, buyers trying to buy that house, by the way. We have no inventory here, zero. So that's another thing that we need to do, guys, is get together and buy the blocks, remodel them, fix them up so that people in our community can actually have a decent place to live, okay? But the thing is, like, the agents that they're coming out the cars or meeting does not look like the people that live in our community. That's all I got to say about that.
Well, and this is facts. So let me just say this. Whenever we have the next Impact Conference, I need to announce we're not having the one in December because of COVID-19. Shouldn't be a surprise. We got an uptick. And, you know, even Dr. Fauci said it's going to be a dark winter. So we can't congregate students like we normally. But when we do, I'd like to have Brian Jenkins there to talk to do some seminars on entrepreneurship. I'd like to have NORAB and Sharon Henry be there with the bank to negotiate students right now as sophomores, not as seniors, freshmen and sophomores, to get them in financial spaces so that they can get ready to purchase a home. And then, Khary, we need them here because some of our students, I just read just recently a Morehouse grad. He was the interim president of Morehouse. He owns a number of Taco Macs, and Sharon, he just bought Mary Mac's downtown.
Wow.
Young brother, just bought Mary Mac's.
Wow.
It's a white-owned business that had us working there, selling our food to white people.
But a lot of people thought that it was black-owned.
Exactly, because the black people cooked the food.
Right.
I mean, they didn't even know what is it, pot liquor was. And so they bring out little things of pot liquor, not knowing that it was white people that owned it, but black people who was cooking. Now it's a black person who owns it, and it's a black people who cook the food, and the pot liquor probably still gonna taste good. And so in this regard, this is where we got to pivot. My concern in the impact movement is that I don't care if I'm known as an icon, but we need a movement. I need dozens of black students. And if they wanted to understand how to become a realtist or a realtor today, where do they need to go, Sharon? Do they go somewhere?
They can go to nareb.com, NAREB.com. Okay. And they'll learn all about who we are and the organization. And a matter of fact, the current President Darnell Williams, he is the national president, because you have the local levels and then you have regional, which, by the way, I currently serve as the regional vice president for Region 6, which is Alabama, Florida, and Georgia.
Excellent.
And, so we have a national president, and his name is Darnell Williams. And he has a movement that he's doing right now. It's called House, Then the Car. Okay. And he's making sure that the young people purchase a house first before they purchase a luxury car. Because if you do it the other way around, and you remember that word that I mentioned before, that DTI, the debt to income ratio, it will mess it up. And a lot of people don't seem to realize that. You have a car payment for $1,000 because you're out here driving these expensive cars with insurance and all that stuff. You can't buy a house if you're making $35,000, $40,000 a year. That's not going to work well. You need to go ahead and purchase the house first, and then you go ahead and purchase the car. But the same thing, Jimmy, about the kids, right? The young people. As parents, if we just get them their housing and let them rent it back to their friends, they're hanging out with them all the time anyway. they might as well be their roommate.
Exactly. So we could
And
do
when
that
they
too.
graduate and when they're moving on into, adulthood and they're creating a family and so on and so forth, give them the property.
Wow.
Instead of, when the kids are getting ready to get married, they don't want no toaster. They don't want a microwave. They don't want an air fryer. Give them a deed. What about that? Let's make some statements like that.
Now that is a wedding gift. So when it's
You know what I'm
over,
talking about.
so you and I are going to have a conversation afterwards, since you're the regional VP, to get me in touch with Darnell to talk about that. What is it called again?
House, then the car.
House, then the car. And then for Brian, for a young student who's never thought about being an entrepreneur, owning their business, they need to go to entrepreneurity.com.
Yeah, they can go. That's the best place to start, entrepreneurity.com. If they want to see our what we call Moxie Chicago. Moxie is our co-work space, so they can go to that website as well. And then our curriculum tool, the business planning tool, is under our website called startingupnow.com, and that's a full-blown curriculum that they can work online, as well as on their mobile device as well. We also just launched a new one. You'll appreciate this title, called Home Hustle University.
Shut up.
Ooh, I like that.
And so I'll make, I can make those links available, but if they want to, check in on our website, they can click on the info section, sign up for the newsletter, and put down in that sign up that they want access to Home Hustle University, one of those tools. That's one of the things that we can provide, because it's the tools, the technology, and the know-how that we need to be able to work from, and to be able to create the resources so that they can actually access the capital to turn their moving from an idea to an invoice. But the key thing that people always know, and it's not always a fun word, overused sometimes, but a business plan, which is simply a strategy to create your solution. And those are the resources that we provide.
All right. Now I want y'all to hear this. Don't forget it. Sharon, don't be like my memory. Both of y'all are invited to the next national conference. All right. So I just got to tell you when and where. I don't have to tell Khary that because he's on the board. So that's a different conversation.
And we'll be having this. And
oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. 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 And we won't get bleach out for people to drink either.
Oh, I promise you we won't be doing that.
Exactly.
Okay. But before we go, I just want to invite you guys, Jimmy, tomorrow, right? Our organization is having something, it's called oh my gosh, I'm getting old. It's a conversation around Black wealth, right? And it's if they go to that we mentioned, narab.com, be able to click onto it, and it's tomorrow. It starts at 1 o'clock.
Excellent. Okay. We'll put that on our website. And Khary, you got any last pieces of advice for equity or philanthropy for our community?
I'll say for every college student, if you're still in school, take an accounting course. Get comfortable with numbers, and go to the library and read every book you can on money and finance. Make that something, just like you're learning another language, become fluent in it, because that will be the difference between any and everything. You're a social worker. If you can manage the budget at your company, you will get promoted. If you can manage and understand the finances in your even in your nonprofit, that creates the opportunities. But ultimately, this is a freedom, right? God wants you to be free. And if you're bound by money, by debt, by not understanding what it means to own, not free. And so the commitment that we make when we get concerned about someone calling you out your name, you should be just as upset when someone gives you a loan at not the proper rate, right? Because which is worse for you? Calling you out your name to take advantage of you financially. That's where, end economic segregation is what the path for freedom. And that's not just for you, that's for your children and for your children. Children.
Yeah.
This is good work. I want to thank all you guys tonight. This is very, very, very important. And I hope the real talk that people will listen to this over and over again, especially our students, because we won't change this. We'll be around here 20 years from now talking the same conversation. And Dr. King wouldn't be happy today, and he wouldn't be saying the same rhetoric. So again, I want to thank all of you for tonight. Again, as we close out tonight, and I thank Sharon and Khary and Brian.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you guys. And if you look on the last one as we close, there is a text to give and a QR code, which is quick response code. I never knew that till last time we were on. If you can look at that, you can make a donation so that Impact can still be around, because we're the only national Black campus ministry in the country right now. This is our audience: Afro-Latinos, Africans, Caribbeans, and African-American. We're Black students. So please remember us. And thank you and good night.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, stick around,
Yeah,
guys.
thanks so
Here
much.
we go.